We are now 355 days away from the midterms, and tonight, after nearly 43 days, the government is set to reopen. The House passed the Senate-approved funding deal, and President Trump signed off on it earlier tonight. But of course, the big news of today centered around Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump. Let's start in the House, where Speaker Mike Johnson finally swore in a new Democratic congresswoman from Arizona who immediately became the final signature needed for a discharge petition to force a vote on releasing the full Epstein files. Tonight, Speaker Johnson said he plans to hold that vote next week. And the big headline today, we got to look at several of the emails in the case. They were released by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee after the panel subpoenaed the Epstein estate. In one email from 2019 to Ghislaine Maxwell and author Michael Wolff, Epstein allegedly wrote that Trump, quote, knew about the girls. We should note that MSNBC has not independently confirmed any allegations in these emails, and Donald Trump has not been accused of any wrongdoing in the case. With that, let's bring in our nightcap, MSNBC senior White House correspondent, and my dear, dear friend Vaughn Hilliard is here. Philip Bump, MSNBC columnist and contributor. Max Rose, former Democratic congressman from New York. He is now a senior advisor to Vote Vets. And Mark McKinnon, who is already the best-dressed person on the panel tonight, former advisor to both George W. Bush and John McCain. Philippe, I start with you and these emails.
Sure.
I understand that this administration continues to say, nothing to see here, except don't look at it, we're not going to show you. What stood out?
I mean, lots of things stood out, right? I mean,
and these are just some emails.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we spend most of the day talking about these 3 emails, but there's this huge tranche of files, like 20,000 files that people have been digging into. All sorts of names have come up. Larry Summers is in there multiple times. Ken Starrs. I mean, there are all these names. Again, not people who are alleged to have engaged in this activity, but people who are in communication with Epstein. And it really helps us flesh out the community in which he operated, right? And I'm not saying operated when he was doing his nefarious activities, but he was deeply enmeshed in this sort of elite culture that is being revealed here. And of course, the thing that people are most attentive to here is the fact that Donald Trump was similarly enmeshed, right? There's one email, for example, where Epstein makes casual reference to this girlfriend who he gave to Donald Trump. And you do a little digging, and there they are in the mid-1990s. First, there's this woman standing with Jeffrey Epstein, and then she's standing with Trump. And the photo of her and Epstein is in Mar-a-Lago. And like all of these ways in which Trump is tied in here, that it really just makes you say, not only like what else is there, but like why didn't they rip the Band-Aid off when they said they were going to rip the Band-Aid off? Because now we get this drip, drip, drip that keeps coming out, and now we're still talking about it after he's been in office for 9 months.
So Republicans, Mark, some want to politicize this and say this is just a smear campaign being led by Democrats, but it's not.
Well, it started with Republicans.
But that's a huge portion, not just of the MAGA base, but MAGA influencers have been. I mean, the basis of MAGA at its start, at its core, has been we're unhappy with the United States of America because it's a 2-tier justice system. It's a 2-tiered economy. Things are not fair. What works for one group doesn't work for the. That's the root of this. On what ground can they say this is just Democrats smearing the president?
Well, the ground's really shaky. And the most chilling thing I heard about today was Lauren Boebert being called to the Situation Room, being confronted by the Attorney General, the head of the FBI, and the Deputy Attorney General, trying to get her to change her vote on this. So I've got a whole new respect for Lauren Boebert, because if she changed her vote, they wouldn't be voting on it next week. And by the way, now that they're voting on it, it's going to be really hard for a lot of those Republicans not to vote yes, right?
Okay, so that's my question. Max, what does it mean that every single House Republican will now have to vote on the record about releasing the Epstein files, who, again, people across the political spectrum in this country, people who don't care about politics whatsoever, are just saying, give me a break. What the hell's in this thing?
Sure. I mean, the story of the Republicans for the last decade has been their willingness to do anything to win the next election. Now, that calculus has kind of overlaid with a desire to do whatever Trump wants because he's controlled the base. Now, I'll one-up your Lauren Boebert story with Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace is running for governor, South Carolina. Strong. That's Donald Trump country. She has signed this petition right alongside Lauren Boebert, and he said to her, we all know he has said to her that he will not endorse her in this primary if she stays on this. She's still on it. Donald Trump's power is declining right before our eyes amongst his base.
Gentlemen, what does it tell you that it's women standing up to him? I'm just going to leave that there. Take us inside the White House.
Oh, if I could first, though.
Please.
There was an effort, we should note, by Republicans after the discharge petition was put forward today, in which they tried to avoid having a vote on this at all. A unanimous consent is what it called.
Explain.
So essentially, there would be no vote of yay or nay. And Democrats, they stopped that from happening and said, no, there will be a vote. And you House Republicans will be on the record next week. And it's also going to be the Senate Republicans that are now going to have it knocking on their door. And to your point, Max, here, you are looking at a constituency that has been promoted or galvanized politically around this idea of this pedophilia cabal. Right? It was Jack Posobiec, this popular right-wing podcaster who was the one who was big in promoting Pizzagate, right? The idea that this in the basement of the DC pizza parlor, there was a sex trafficking ring. Well, he's close with J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance back in 2021 was calling for the full release of these files. And so here we are. Here is this moment up on Capitol Hill, and now the White House is literally calling these individuals. They're in the situation to have this conversation inside the White House right now. I think it's worth noting. How often does Donald Trump take questions when cameras are welcomed in? He can go on for an hour at a time most days. What did he do tonight after signing the bill to reopen the government? He was asked about Jeffrey Epstein, the end of questions, and the cameras were let out.
Okay, do you know what's so interesting? We're going to talk about this dinner that happened at the White House later, right? Donald Trump had this dinner tonight with all these business leaders. I talked to people close to those leaders who said there's going to be a pool spray. They're going to talk to reporters somehow. And Trump would have loved that, being flanked by all these big business people from New York, yet they didn't talk to reporters. Here's one for you. Republicans' response to the emails that Democrats released by releasing thousands of their own. And in that, it included one email. Again, Republicans released it, an email where Jeffrey Epstein wrote, quote, "I know how dirty Donald is." I don't know. That's a wow. What were they thinking?
Yeah,
they didn't notice that one was in there, or
it's
they're
quite
like
possible. Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of information there. It's quite possible that one slipped through. It's one of the things that's fascinating is we're having this conversation. We talk about how the base has been pushing for this and how prominent voices have been pushing for this, but it really is this entire manifestation of Trumpism that the only person who isn't involved in it is Donald Trump. Right? Donald Trump himself was the only person who ever put the brakes on this. I remember the Fox News interview he had when he was running, and they were asking him, "Oh, should these files be released?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, probably." And then they clipped out the part where he said, "Well, maybe not, because a lot of people will get sort of, dragged through the mud if you do." Donald Trump's the only person who he stoked this idea that the elites are bad and are out to get you, that really built up into QAnon and this idea that there was this cabal of pedophiles drinking kids' blood and all these insane things. And he was fine with that. He was fine with that as president. But when it comes to this particular thing, and now, of course, that raises the obvious question, right? Like, if you're Lauren Boebert and you're getting leaned on in the Situation Room, not only why would you change your mind, why would you change your mind today, right? Like, if you come out today,
that
right?
Like, so much worse.
Exactly.
Okay, right? For her and them.
But combine this, right? So much of this fury over the last 10 years has been around these conspiracy theorists that there are these powerful people trafficking minors. Ghislaine Maxwell is in jail. She is serving a 20-year sentence for crimes, including conspiring to sex traffic minors. And now we've got a whistleblower, while she's now in this minimum security prison where she decides between working out today or playing golf, who says she's working on trying to get her sentence commuted from Trump.
Well, I mean...
How did we get here?
I mean, boy, you just track that down the line. It's pretty obvious what's going on. And I mean, this ends nowhere good. And it's going to be a monstrous distraction for the president. And this is going to go on for weeks, if not months more. I don't think it's fatal politically, because, again, how many people out there are surprised today that Donald Trump was in these emails? I think very few, really. And I think the thing that Democrats have to be careful with is prosecute this to the fullest extent, get them on their heels, but get back to affordability. This is not going to win the election.
That is a great point. Can you talk to us about, in the emails, it appears that Epstein is claiming he was advising Russian government officials on how to deal with Trump during his first term. What do you know about this?
Right, this is just actually a month before the Helsinki summit there, where President Trump said that he believed essentially Russian President Putin over U.S. intelligence agencies. And a month before that, he is emailing with somebody who he saw as being a potential intermediary with the Russians to begin a conversation and to introduce him to Lavrov. And he makes the case there quite explicitly that he thinks that he understands Trump and knows how to speak Trump, essentially offering his services to the Russians. I mean, it's, I think, damning when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. But I think that, again, there's no evidence that Donald Trump, right, used Jeffrey Epstein as his own intermediary with the Russians. But I think, again, what this tells us here and what it tells the American public is that there is such a power structure that bears out in these emails.